All right, and we are live. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to Core City Cadets. Today, what we're going to be doing is running our buddy Steve through the character that he's going to be creating. So, Steve, you want to give yourself a little introduction or anything?
Well, sure. I would love to. My name is Steve. I will be joining this game, very fortunately. I'm incredibly excited to be a part of this. I don't have a whole lot of background experience in role-playing games. I've played Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition a few times. I was actually in the same campaign with Meg, the one with a bunch of people.
Like when she was talking about like 9 and 8 people all at the same time?
Yeah, that was honestly really fun. Our DM did a great job. I think it just kind of fizzled apart just because keeping track of so many people is very difficult.
Oh, yeah,
nowadays.
totally. Yeah, dude, I totally understand. That's one of the things we were talking about,
Yeah.
is how you guys were able to even manage. Who was GMing that one?
That was Micah Cheney.
Oh, okay. And before you ran that game, what was your experience with, well, not ran, before you played in that game, what was your experience with D&D before that?
I had only heard of it referred to as about the nerdiest thing you could do, and didn't
So
know.
naturally it drew you in.
Absolutely, yes. It's almost like a challenge.
What's your background with comic book characters or like superheroes in general, like TV shows and video games, anything like that?
I have seen just some of the more basic and more well-known Marvel and DC series, like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, all that stuff. Superheroes has never been an incredibly strong interest of mine, but always something that is fun to watch, fun to pay attention to. I did watch Teen Titans, which I think is a big frame of reference for this particular game, and I loved that. So,
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, there's that game's, or not game, but that show is very limited main story arc. It's still super episodic, so our game is going to be it's going to seem kind of episodic at first, and then that's when we'll really get into the story arcs. Like I'll get these big overarching stories to connect all the stuff that you've done before. And Teen Titans hasn't done those big main story arcs, but it'll definitely be that kind of episodic kind of we'll have like those little adventures and stuff like that. So if you're used to like watching that show, oh yeah, you'll feel right at home with masks, man.
wonderful.
What you're running a game right now as well, right? Why don't you talk a little bit about the game you're running? Just kind of
Okay.
give us little tips, little pointers that you've been doing with it.
Yeah, it's D&D 5th edition. We're actually going by a campaign guide, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and we're only about 4 sessions in or so. It's really fun. It's a lot of work just, being the game master, dungeon master, as I'm sure you are very well aware.
Just a little bit less math with this game than what you're running, so it's not quite as much brain power as far as charts and tables and stuff. But this game is definitely exercising the creative side of my brain. You know what I mean, like the artistic side.
Definitely. One thing I really do like about the current game that I'm dungeon mastering is the player's dedication to their characters. In my previous experience, I find it just a lot more fun when the players can really step into the shoes of their character and try to metagame as little as possible. And we're getting exactly that with this game. We have one character called Bill the Catholic.
Bill the Catholic. I think that's Smalls' character, right?
That's correct. And I honestly feel as though I know Bill the Catholic, the character, more intimately than I know the player. He just does not break character, and it brings an element of just antics and humor to the table that I have never seen before. So it's a lot of fun. A little bit hard to wrangle at times, but that's the nature of the game. It's very enjoyable.
You said you've only been 4 sessions in, but is there any one moment that stood out in your game so far?
Ooh, well, Bill got lost in the sewers when they were
as you do.
They had been given very clear instructions on follow the yellow signs marking your path in the sewers, but Bill is blind.
So it's like follow the yellow shit road, apparently.
Yes, and he just does a really good job of drawing scenes out and forcing the other players to kind of improvise around what he's doing. It almost feels like Bill the Catholic is actually running our game, and I just let him go at that point. It's honestly kind of relieving not having to come up with all these things because he just kind of does them anyway.
Yeah. What's the hardest aspect that you found about GMing?
I would say probably just making sure everybody maintains focus and it just doesn't get distracted. Like when we're at the table, we're doing this game, and I don't want to enforce that to the point where it becomes not fun for everybody. So I think just kind of finding that balance between making sure everybody's having a good time and also getting the game played.
Yeah.
But haven't had too much trouble with that thus far, thankfully.
Well, that's good to hear, man. It's always a challenge as a GM to make the game equal parts fun and equal parts serious, because you spend this time and all this work creating something, and so you don't always want your players to just kind of like go off on these random tangents. You're like, but I spent 3 hours like writing this outline last night for us to do, and you guys decided to just like get laid at the tavern with a bunch of orc women. Like,
I mean, it's their game as much as it is yours, if not more. So, you just got to respect that and go into it with that understanding.
Yeah, it does tear at the heartstrings a little bit when you're like, I did all this stuff and they don't want to do it. Yeah. All right, well, cool, man. I'm glad we were able to sit down and do that little introduction with you. With our other players, we kind of had it all at once, and everybody's kind of button in a little bit, and I think you're really comfortable on mic, which is great, and I think that's definitely going to help us through, because you said you recorded a little bit with your other podcast, or not podcast, with your other group, but not necessarily like mic'd up or anything.
Correct. It's not actually us talking through microphones. I just kind of set my phone in the middle of the table and record and listen back to it and post it on Dropbox for the guys to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Do you have it posted like on YouTube or anything like that?
No, not at the moment. I would like to have the game a little bit more kind of going before we do that. Just a little bit more polished, get everybody a little bit more used to playing, because a couple of our players, this is their first game, and they're still kind of trying to get comfortable with the whole role-playing aspect of it, of, being a different person than yourself when you're at the table. And, I'd like to, I guess, get everybody a little bit more familiar before we go
live.
Pretty much, yeah.
Before you send it out to the world, right?
Exactly.
Cool. So we'll go ahead and jump into your character then. Now you have chosen a playbook, right?
That's correct.
What playbook did you choose, Steve?
I have chosen to play the Doomed.
Awesome. And what kind of drew you in about the Doomed?
I think that it would work very well for the narrative to kind of have a character that's a bit more dark in there, that has just that fear of death and destruction, just this dramatic aspect to it that none of the other playbooks seem to really have in them. I'm a big fan of Teen Titans, and Raven is just pretty much the coolest one, because she's just like, I'm not gonna... can we say bad words on this?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, I'm going to try to avoid to. Raven's just like, I'm not going to take any crap from anybody.
Oh, well, come on. That's not even that bad of a word. You're fine.
Hey, my mom would disagree.
I'm not going to take any fuck from anybody.
Ooh,
I mean, that just makes no
dang.
sense, right?
Okay, yeah.
Went there. Yeah, so, well, did you come up with a... Did you come up with a character name?
I have, yes. I will be playing a character by the name of Silas Cooper.
Silas Cooper. Any inspiration behind the name or anything like that?
I think subconsciously, it kind of sounded like Sly Cooper, like that old video game.
Raccoon. I was exactly like when you said it. I was exactly thinking Sly Cooper, the raccoon, like the raccoon PlayStation game.
Yeah, I just I'm a fan of the first name Silas, and I was trying to think of a last name, and I kept going to Cooper in my mind, and it took me a little while to realize that was kind of the connection that my brain was trying to bring to reality. But I'm very happy with the way that it just kind of flows off the tongue.
Oh yeah, definitely. Does your character have like a hero name or anything like that?
Yes. And a lot of this is going to be, I think, further explained when we get into the whole backstory aspect, but he's going to be called the Stranger.
Any kind of like inspiration or anything behind that name?
I think it just, first of all, sounds very cool, and it just kind of is an example of his personality. I think Silas is kind of much more of a reserved person, not necessarily a social butterfly, maybe intelligent but not particularly confident, and so maybe doesn't have too many friends, and maybe heard the phrase, "Oh, don't talk to strangers, Billy," and referring to Silas as a stranger, and maybe it just kind of stuck in his mind.
So someone kind of like casually referred to Silas as a stranger, and ever since then he kind of like latched onto that name. It's like, you know what would be a cool superhero name?
Yeah, the Stranger.
The Stranger.
Maybe saving people from the shadows.
Did you ever watch the movie with Alec Baldwin, The Shadow? Or like
No.
hear about it?
That sounds
He
awesome.
plays a superhero called the Shadow, and he doesn't necessarily like manipulate shadows. He kind of like gets sucked into a shadow and can travel through the shadows.
Alec
kind of.
Baldwin is a superhero?
Yeah, it's like a 1920s superhero. Like, so it's set in the 1920s. But what it was is the Shadow was a radio show first. So it was like instead of watching a superhero show on TV, you would listen to the superhero show called The Shadow on the radio. And I just remember one of the big things about it is like he had this catchphrase, and it was like, "The Shadow knows," and it's like, so I don't know. It just kind of reminded me of that when you were talking about like saving people from the shadows. It was like it just totally like reminded me of that character.
I may have to watch that and take some inspiration from
the movie. Like the movie is
Baldwin.
pretty cool. And then they've adapted him into comics a little bit. I think I want to say he's under Dark Horse, so not DC or Marvel. I want to say it's Dark Horse. I'm probably wrong on that though. But yeah, it's like this old radio show, old, and you can find them online and just listen to like podcasts before podcasts.
Yeah.
Right. So someone casually called you the Stranger, you sort of like latched on to that name.
Yep. I think there is a bit of a darker element tying more into, the Doomed playbook. And that another thing that kind of drew me into the Doomed playbook was the factor of coming up with a nemesis. And that was a very cool exercise in creativity for me, I think, just because when I listened initially to the podcast that you had recorded with the rest of the team previously, I found myself just thinking about, oh man, what kind of character would I do? This would be really cool if I did this and that and the other thing. And I've never heard this game played before until just recently when I listened to the Nerds on a Roll podcast, which is very cool. But they don't have it Doomed, so I never really got any exposure as to how that character's played. But you could consider this a little bit of a cop-out, I guess. But my nemesis, my Doom, and my acquisition of power is all kind of spawning from one entity.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, that's essentially kind of what Raven is too, right? Like Trigon is her nemesis, but Trigon is also where she got her powers.
Yeah.
Right. And who did you have as your nemesis?
Well, it is going to be a very mysterious entity that spoke to Silas through a series of dreams, maybe nightmares. I guess it'd be a little scary, but it referred to itself as the Familiar. And this is something that just appeared to Silas in a dream, and he could almost see part of its face out of his peripheral vision in the dream, but never could get a good look or a good, real understanding of what this thing is or what its intentions are. I mean, I'd imagine that most people listening to this have had dreams before and tried to recall them, and some of the details could be a little bit lost, a little bit fuzzy. And so I like the idea of this nemesis, this Doom, manifesting itself via a dream, because it is very unclear to Silas what its intentions are.
And is Silas like almost afraid to sleep because of it or anything?
Very much so. Yeah, he has a hard time sleeping. That goes into his appearance of just having maybe those dark circles under his eyes pretty much all the time.
Kind of seems tired not even seems tired. He just probably like looks tired all the time.
He is tired all the time, I think. yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the powers that you wanted, like the power set you wanted to have?
Ooh, okay. Well, I actually came up with this before even reading the actual Masks book, without actually seeing the options for the powers, but it did tie into one. Psychic constructs, just kind of making creatures out of the shadows. For example, maybe he was a lonely kid, and when he first acquired these powers via the familiar, he woke up and was able to conjure a little dog made of shadows to keep him company. And I don't know what he named it. I'll come up with that later probably, but yeah, he's just been toying with those powers and can create various things out of shadows, and also body transmutation, so he could maybe give himself wings via the same shadow-like material. I think it'll make for an excellent kind of support character on the team.
Like support character in what sort of way? What do you envision your characters going to be using their powers to do in a support sense?
Maybe if Kyle's character, being the bull, just wanted to, I don't know, I could make a bird and have the bird just like drop him on a bad guy or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just kind of like, boom, just like throw him right in there. That's cool.
Yeah, or
That's
kind
cool.
of
I dig that.
make little shields to shield us from explosions or something. I just I see him as much more of a protector than an offender.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So on the actual chart then for abilities, you'd be doing body transmutation and psychic constructs, right?
That is correct.
Cool. And then we have already done your nemesis section, so we'll go ahead and skip on to the rest. So the next part that we're going to be doing is called Your Doom. This is like we are just coming up with your doom now. You're doomed. Your powers may be killing you. Actually, you know what, Steve? If you want to go ahead and pull it up, we'll have you read that section.
Okay, sure.
That's on the second page. Yep, you got it.
I think so. The part that says, something about your powers dooms you. It's just a matter of time before your doom comes for you. Until then, though, you've got a nemesis who needs fighting and a world that needs saving. After all, it's better to burn out than to fade away.
That always makes me think of the Def Leppard song. It's better to burn out than fade away. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry to ruin the moment, but
I think you very much accented the moment rather than ruining it. I don't think that's what you started reading, and now
No.
I can't find it.
just on the second page.
See, I screenshotted it, so it's kind of just very...
The part where it's like overexerting yourself, injuring innocence. You know, where you have to select that part.
Okay. Oh, yep, I see. You're doomed. Your powers may be killing you, or maybe you're hunted ruthlessly, or maybe you embody an apocalypse, but one way or another, your future is grim. What brings your doom closer? Choose two. I have chosen overexerting yourself and talking about it openly.
And so give us examples of what would be an example of overexerting your character? Like what's an example of that?
I think creating any sort of psychic construct physically larger than what he's used to. Say, maybe the largest thing I can comfortably conjure is, a panther to attack a bad guy. But if I have to make a big shield to protect everybody, that would be, I think, an example of overexertion.
Okay. And then what'd you say the other one you took? We're talking about it openly?
Talking about it openly, yeah. That's an interesting one. I think it'll be cool for the narrative.
And that one seems pretty self-explanatory as to what it is. What it is you're just talking about it openly. But kind of what this game is creating not only reason why, but the consequences. So the consequences here, you'll move your doom track when you talk about it openly. But why would talking about it openly bring your character closer to doom?
I think that it's because of the familiar, that nemesis, who initially did grant me these powers and perhaps doesn't want me using them, doesn't want people to be aware that the familiar even exists, kind of prefers to remain anonymous and behind the scenes. But the more I talk about my powers and the acquisition of them and the doom, I think maybe it is almost like a little blip on the familiar's radar and just makes that entity, for whatever reason, want to destroy me even more so every time I talk about it.
And so the familiar in the sense is almost omnipotent in the sense that he can kind of tell when Silas is talking about his powers.
Yeah, in a sense. I think he keeps very close tabs on me. And I love that just because neither Steve nor Silas knows what the hell this thing even is. So that's kind of leaving a lot up to your discretion and creativity. So I think that'll be very fun to play out.
It will be. Trust me.
All right.
It will be.
Maybe not for Silas, but for Steve. Steve will probably enjoy it.
And so the next section that we're going to move on to is doom signs. If you want to read out that section.
Okay. It's somewhere. Ah, here we go. These are abilities that come to you with your approaching doom. Once you have taken all 5 doom signs above the line, you may take your doom arrives the next time your doom track fills. So we have dark visions, infinite powers, portal, burning bright, and bolstered. Like I said, don't have any experience playing this game, so I don't necessarily know how all of these would play out, but it told me to choose one that I already can do for the cost of 1 track on my Doom, and I chose Dark Visions. Mark your Doom track to have a vision about the situation at hand. After the vision, ask the GM a question. They will answer it honestly.
So what that would mean is none of those are based on rolls, it looks like. So you can just activate it whenever you want, right? So what would happen is you would say, hey, I want to use my Doom. I want to use a Doom sign to have a dark vision right now, right? And then we'd kind of in the fiction have to figure out what it's going to be about. We would describe the vision. I would describe the vision and what's happening in it, and then you would be able to ask me any question about the vision, and I have to tell you exactly like the right answer. I can't like manipulate you or anything, or like kind of give you a half truth or anything. I have to answer the exact question honestly. And the cool thing about that is, unlike some of the other stuff where you get a set questions to answer, it looks like you just get to ask me a question. Whatever question it is, that's what I got to do. That's what I got to answer.
All right. Yeah, I think that'll be really cool. Very useful for maybe situations where we don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like a little bit more intense than just the what is it? Not analyze.
Read a bad situation or something.
Yeah, something I already forgot what the name of it is. But yeah, rather than just a situation one, assess the situation. I knew it started.
There we go.
So rather than just assess the situation, where you would roll either succeed or fail, and then you get a set questions that you get to ask me. This one is just like, by marking your Doom track, you can just ask me a question. We can in the fiction do a cool little cutscene almost, and then also you can ask me any question you want. Essentially, that's the bonus you get from having that Doom sign.
Yeah, that's I really do like the concept of a Doom track. Just I have these little things that I can do to really help out the team or myself or whatever, but I can only do them so many times because eventually it kills me. So
and the one you've chosen, Dark Visions, totally ties in with your dreams, right? And ties in with the familiar who's kind of omnipotent and keeps tabs on you. It's almost like an example like the Dark Visions. You could be like almost seeing through the familiar's eyes for some reason.
There we go. That's cool.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next section now. The next section is called Sanctuary.
Okay. Would you like me to read this one?
I would, please.
Okay. You have a place where you can rest, recover, and reflect upon your powers. Choose and underline 3 features of your sanctuary. I will not be reading all of these choices. I'm just going to tell you the ones that I chose.
All right.
Wow. I wonder what they were. I think it was a containment system, which would be like almost like an isolation tank, like a little chamber, like those saltwater things that people use, but maybe some, we can figure out exactly what that entails.
Yeah, I think we had been talking off mic about that, and it was almost like it was a containment tank, but instead of water, I think it had you were kind of floating in your own shadows. I think is that what we had come up with?
Right. Yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. I think locks and traps probably, because it's I want this to be kind of a safe place where people won't just be able to get me, so it's going to be a little bit protected. and meditation space, which also is just kind of that same isolation thing. I don't know if that's exactly what I told you. I apparently had more confidence in my memory than is real because
real, yeah. So the info that I had written from when we were talking off mic was you have a soundproof tank in a basement. Your parents built it as a place of comfort for you. So without even really knowing what your powers did, your parents were able to build this, or at least provide you with this tank.
Mm-hmm.
You've been using it since before you had powers. Remember, we came up with that?
Right.
So it's like, it was kind of like a security blanket to you more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really know how it works. It's always been a constant in your life. Like ever since you have no memories of not having access to that tank, essentially.
Yeah, always just a safe place.
And it was the tank was definitely more techy than mystical, and then floats in your shower. That other thing I had was floats in shadow powers, and tank. So what you had specifically chosen was definitely containment system, right? And then I think meditation space was the other for sure. And then did you remember what you chose for the two downsides of your sanctuary?
Yes, I think it was. Apparently, I don't remember. Let me look.
I know you did tied intricately to your doom.
That's
because
what it was.
You chose that, but you didn't know yet, and you were going to leave that up to me.
Yeah, and location known to many because it's just in my house. So a
Yeah.
lot of people who my parents are friends with, or the few friends that I may have brought home from school, are probably aware of this space.
Yeah.
So I think
So they know it's a tank because you don't always show, because your character hasn't really told a lot of people about their powers right now, right? So a lot of
Correct.
people know what the tank is, and you kind of just, does your character just kind of tell them like, yeah, that's a tank in my basement. It
yeah,
just
this
exists.
this is a place that makes me feel good.
Yeah. That's cool. That's a funny way to
Definitely
put it, too.
not killing me.
And then when you call upon your resources of your sanctuary to solve a problem, say what you want to do. The GM will give you 1 to 4 conditions you must fulfill to complete your solution. Did you? I don't think we talked about any of that when we were coming up with your sanctuary stuff. Did you have a chance to think about that or anything?
I did read that and thought that maybe it was more of just a situationally based thing. Say, if I wanted to go back to my sanctuary because I'm really exhausted, you could be like, oh, well, too bad. There's gargoyles guarding your house. You got to fight them first. I don't know.
Let's see. So when you call upon the resources of your sanctuary to solve a problem, say what you want to do. The GM will give you 1 to 4 conditions you must fulfill to complete your solution. Yeah, we'll probably just have to do that as we come, because I'm kind of on the same track you are, where it sounds more situational to me than anything. You and your team will risk danger from, that could be like the Core City Corp that we came up with. Maybe that thing uses a lot of power, and if you use it, they're like, wait, why was there this huge like blip of power like in a house?
Yeah, what the heck is this
Figured out,
guy
yeah.
doing?
The best you can do is a lesser. Okay, cool. So I think we've actually run through everything that we ran through with everybody else. You were just supremely well prepared.
Why, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, and also the Doomed is pretty easy to play just because, or at least easy to start with because they don't have moves like the other playbooks do. I think.
Yeah, your doom signs are the closest thing to moves, and they don't require like rolls or anything. So
Right.
Let's see if there's anything I had written down from our talk. How old is your character?
What did we say, 15 or 16?
We had 16.
16.
And then your character, how long have they had their powers?
Since age 8, I believe. And the acquisition of said power was from the familiar in that dream where I made some sort of a deal, the conditions of which are unknown to Silas, but probably very well known to the familiar who intends to follow up with whatever promise this is.
And so since your characters had their powers for 8 years, essentially, how long have they been like a hero?
Probably since around age 12 is when he started to really get comfortable with these powers and have the desire to use them to help people out, and just had the aspiration to go to hero school and be one of the good guys.
Mm-hmm. Kind of to show that even though you're using kind of like this, what seems like a dark kind of power, you can use it for good stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. I think Silas is a very benevolent person. Doesn't like seeing people get hurt, likes helping people out, but doesn't necessarily like recognition or credit.
Mm-hmm. And your character's like pretty since they've had it for 8 years, he's like pretty comfortable using them too, just to like use shadows, like grab his toothbrush, brush his teeth, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's pretty comfortable with it.
What about your parents, like your home life with your parents?
I think both of his parents are still together, and he's an only child. You can't say he has a bad home life. He has very nice parents, but maybe they're both very busy and can't pay him all the attention that he necessarily wishes that he had. So he's a little bit lonely, but no crazy weird home stuff to speak of. It's on the surface seems like a pretty normal family, but then there's this crazy doom thing that not a lot of people know about.
How long have your parents known about your powers?
I think it's maybe a few years. I think like it's almost like when your parents think you're smoking weed in their house, like they can smell it, but they don't necessarily want to confront you because they don't want to believe it themselves or something. Maybe, so I think they've suspected it for a while, but just haven't pressed him for it, haven't tried to gather much information about it.
Are they pretty, do they know that you want to go to Pinnacle Prep?
I think that it would be a very good place to kind of start off my characters being like, hey, Mom and Dad. I mean, hold on. Gotta get a character voice. Hey, Mom and Dad. I want to talk to you about these powers I have. And, something like that. That'd just be a cool first scene, I think.
Gotcha. So you want to have your parents know that you have powers, but not necessarily know that you're, like right now, your character wants to go to Pinnacle Prep.
Right.
Okay. Because, yeah, so that way we could either make it or not make it a point of contention later, essentially.
Yeah, maybe Mom loves it, Dad doesn't, or something.
That's cool.
You don't have to argue with yourself as the NPCs.
yeah, that'll be fun. But like it's like I mentioned to you before on the other cast too. Every once in a while, I'll probably just defer a part to somebody else, as long as because it'll be like your parents. So I might take the stance of one parent, and then I'll just tell like Walter will be the other parent, as long as because the character is related to because the NPC would be related to your character, it'd have to be cool with you first. If you're okay,
Walter would be a great mom,
right? No. Maybe not in real life, but in this game he might be. Yeah. So as long as you're okay with it, I'll just tell Walter, like, okay, Walter, your goal is that your character is not a fan of this. So just for the next couple little lines, just kind of role play as a character who's not a fan of Silas going to superhero school. And you and I are just going to role play that out to make it as much of a mystery to us as it is to you.
I like that a lot.
We'll just be improving it basically the whole thing. And I'll do that throughout. I'll do that throughout the game. I'll defer NPCs to you guys to kind of act out. I might since we're on mic, it's a little different. Mm-hmm. So instead of just kind of like whispering in your ear, I might like write it down on a piece of paper and just like slide it over to you and like, hey, here's your goal right now.
Okay.
And I might like stall, like don't like here's the goal, but maybe stall, like drag it out a little bit, kind of like frustrate the player or something like that.
I like that. That'll be really cool to just hear and have it played out. And I think once we all get really comfortable with this, we're probably going to be really good at it.
Yeah, because one thing I'm trying to do is I want to make this as much of a game as it is a radio show to people listening.
Right.
Right. So like I want to have like, we're all going to roll. I'm not going to like edit out parts where I say, hey, roll. Mm-hmm. Right. But I do want it to kind of have that aspect where the players kind of don't know, the listener doesn't know. And even if I know what the outcome is, I'm still not going to know how it gets to that outcome essentially. If in conversation, I might have certain little I don't want to necessarily have certain plot points set before you get there. I don't want to have too many of those because then it's almost like, well, then why aren't we playing the game? Why
Do
don't
we even
just,
have a choice?
Yeah, why don't we just write a comic book at that point, right?
Yeah.
So I'll try to limit, end games as much as possible, right? But I will have one or two that I'll kind of manipulate you guys into that, but make you think that you chose everything.
Sounds good to
Right.
me.
Cool. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. This is a little shorter since it's not all 4 people. I mean, we got, we're a good half hour or so, I think, into recording. Yeah, we're only about 35 minutes in, which is about how much we spent on everybody. So
All
I
right.
think we made pretty good progress today.
I would agree.
On the next round, we're actually going to have, I think we're going to have you with Kyle, Meg, Walter, and myself, and we're going to do the second half of backstory for all of you guys. And on the actual sheet for people following along that are listening, that's when we're going to do things like the moment of truth, just kind of describe it real quick. And then we'll also talk about your labels, which ones you're going to start, you're going to put a +1 to. We're going to explain the conditions a little bit, just kind of reiterate them. We'll go into the backstory, which we've sort of answered a little bit here, but it'll just give everybody that extra depth, everybody at the table that extra depth. And then we'll talk about when the team first came together, right? We'll create little stories about how you guys all kind of met each other, because this game is kind of under the assumption that you guys have been a team for at least a couple of months. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's not gonna be a gathering of the team montage as a session. It'll just, or as a playing session. The gathering of the team is essentially just when we're talking about backstory, right? We'll talk about what you guys did and maybe go into a little bit of detail about what happened. It won't necessarily be based on roles or
Okay.
anything like that. And then we'll also talk about relationships, which I'll have you guys talk about outside of off mic. You guys will be able to come up with your relationships, and then we'll talk about that there, and then talk about influence, and which characters at the table will have influence over you or you over the other players.
All right. Cool.
Cool. So thanks everybody for checking out this kind of little mini episode of the Core City Cadets podcast. Nathan, signing off.
Steve doing the same.
Shadowing off.